I have been, in the last day or so, just elated at the result of the Italian election. And I keep showing Debbie, social media segments of the winner of that election. This is Giorgia Meloni. And Debbie goes, man, Dinesh, you're really obsessed with Italy. And I'm like, yeah, I am a little bit, but the significance of the Italian election. Now, the media is saying, well, it's this far-right candidate, Giorgia Meloni, very disturbing because there are echoes of Mussolini. She's the new Mussolini. Well, she's not the new Mussolini. She is, in fact, the first Italian woman who is going to become the prime minister. And she actually is a conservative. She's center-right. And I suppose the only thing she has in common with Mussolini is that they were both nationalists. Well, this hardly proves that she is Mussolini or that she's some sort of a fascist. Why? Because nationalism is a very common label embraced by people all over the world. Pretty much every leader of every country today, as in the past, is a nationalist. Nationalism comes from the left and from the right. Let's think about it. Fidel Castro was a nationalist. Stalin was a nationalist. Mandela was a nationalist. Gandhi was a nationalist in India. So being a nationalist hardly makes you right-wing. It hardly makes you a fascist. People who say such things are uttering complete nonsense. Now, in Italy, Giorgia Meloni is described as centro-destra. Centro-destra means centro-center, destra right. So center-right. And her slogan, in fact, her slogan reminded me a little bit of Mayra Flores in the Rio Grande Valley. It's essentially God, family, and country. And I told Debbie, we'll play a couple of clips or a clip from Giorgia Meloni tomorrow on the podcast. She basically talks about the fact, well, let me quote her. I am Georgia. She starts with her name. I'm an individual. This is who I am. I'm Georgia. I am a woman. Not I identify as a woman. I am a woman. I am a mother. I am Italian. I am Christian. You will not take that away from me. Think about this. What is fascist about saying any of this? And yet, this is the rhetoric that has unnerved the Western media. By the way, the Western media is so left-wing that think of it this way. Even though Giorgia Meloni is centro-destra, slightly to the right of center, if you are on the far left, as NPR is, as the New York Times is, as the BBC is, then from your perspective, somebody else who's center-right appears to be far-right. And so what I'm getting at is that the media's portrait of Giorgia Meloni is more reflective of the media's position on the ideological spectrum than it is about Giorgia Meloni. Now, if Giorgia Meloni was a true fascist, if she really was Mussolini, the left would be praising her to the sky. Why? Because Mussolini came up as a Marxist. He never, in fact, renounced fully his Marxism. In fact, he remained a lifelong socialist. He called himself, of course, a national socialist. And in fact, in this sense, Mussolini's ideology is very similar to most of the people in the Western media. Giorgia Meloni, of course, is anti-socialist. Now, she's not a rabid capitalist. In fact, she attacks woke big business. And she basically says that part of the strategy of destroying our individuality, destroying our patriotism, destroying our family values, destroying our Christianity, is to reduce us to becoming what she calls il numero, a number. If you're a number, think about it. You're vulnerable to big business, which just treats you as a consumer, and you're also vulnerable to the state, which treats you as a pawn. And so Giorgia Meloni says, we refuse to be a number for anybody. We refuse to be a number for the state, but we also refuse to be a number for big business. What's interesting in all these evocations of Mussolini, and as I looked on Twitter, I guess it was last night, Mussolini was trending. And it occurred to me, very few people know, and in fact, very few American textbooks say that Mussolini had a kind of mutual admiration society with FDR. FDR called Mussolini, quote, that admirable Italian gentleman. Mussolini reviews FDR's book. I think it was called Looking Forward in an Italian magazine. And Mussolini goes, this book is fantastic. I'm paraphrasing now. This guy's one of us. He's a fascist. So this is all, of course, prior to World War II, when the collision of national interests made Mussolini and FDR into enemies. But my point is, in the 1930s, in the late 20s and early 30s, when FDR first came to power in 1932, he was a kind of a super fan of Mussolini. In fact, he sent members of his brain trust, like Rexford Tugwell, to fascist Rome to study Italian fascism, which those men believed was more progressive than the New Deal. Here's Rexford Tugwell, one of FDR's top advisors, talking about fascism. It is the cleanest, neatest, most efficiently operating piece of social machinery I've ever seen. It makes me envious. You had leftist intellectuals praising Mussolini as a left-winger. Fascism was understood to be a phenomenon of the left. And so the point I'm trying to make is all of this is now swept under the rug and hidden. Mussolini is portrayed solely as a nationalist, and the other part of Mussolini, which is that he was a socialist, is conveniently forgotten.